This is your Daily 5 for Tuesday, April 21st, 2026. One of our listeners sent over a link to a Verge article, which has a wonderful headline. It is, "The creative software industry has declared war on Adobe." And while I think that headline is a bit hyperbolic, I don't think they've declared war on Adobe because this isn't something that just happened recently. There have been alternatives to Adobe that have slowly and steadily been coming up to par with the Creative Suite for a while now. It just seems like it's finally getting to a critical mass stage. And in particular, last week, there were a number of announcements that I saw many YouTube channels covering on these either free or drastically cheaper alternatives to the tools that Adobe offers. Now, look, I've talked in the past about the fact that I like Adobe's products, and that's chiefly because I've spent my entire creative life using them. I don't particularly like Adobe as a company, certainly not in recent years, because I don't think any big company is one you should like because none of them have any interest in you. But I would be a liar if I didn't tell you that my default suite of tools are all Adobe products when it comes to creativity outside of things like Procreate for drawing and illustration, Audacity for sound editing or audio editing. But most of the stuff I use on a daily basis, and I do use at least one or more of their tools on an almost daily basis, they're going to be Adobe tools. But I've signed up and filled out every survey that they've ever sent me, and I have been very, very clear about the fact that I don't like what they're doing with generative AI, and I don't mean that they have it. That's fine. They want to have it. For some creatives, that's something they actually want. I don't really have a problem with that per se, but Adobe has a real way of trying to shove it in your face, even if you've never used any of those tools, and even if you say you're not interested, those things keep coming back and they keep trying to get you to use them. And that, I think, is something that bothers me a lot, and I've pointed that out. And it is also simply a reality, and I'm very clear in my surveys. I'm honest. I tell them, yeah, I use your tools all the time, but I'm going to tell you right now that the cost is right at the ceiling of what I'm willing to pay because a lot of these price increases are driven by their AI tools, which that's fine for those who want them, but the rest of us should not be subsidizing that if we're not interested. So that, I've pointed out, is a problem. And I've said, hey, the competition, they're right there. For most people, they do not need the Creative Suite. And in fact, I have volunteered to do virtual interviews. I've done a few now, and I'll do every single one they ever offer to have me part of to make that point over and over, because I do think that what this article is talking about is the fact that Adobe has squandered most of the goodwill, if not all of it, that it had with a lot of creative individuals. Not only because of the price increases, which have, Adobe's not cheap. Now, look, the tools are great. I'm not sitting here telling you that they make cheap tools and try to bill you twice for them or anything like that. They're great tools, but they are expensive. Good or not, there's only so much anybody can afford, especially when everything just keeps getting more expensive, at least in this country, and I assume everywhere else. So there is going to be a point where you have to start thinking, okay, am I really getting value from this anymore? Which is a very different proposition, is the idea of value versus price. Those are two different things. And also, again, most of the creative community is not all that enthused with AI as it currently exists and may never be. And the fact that they keep trying to punch that through so that you will just use it is probably not really helping out the value proposition. And so I want to make that very clear to them and do. So I actually have thought about, okay, if there's another increase, do I want to keep paying for this, especially with the other tools that are available? In this article, we'll talk about them. And I'm not sure the answer is yes. And I've been using Adobe since high school. So that's 30 years. But you know what? That loyalty only goes so far, and certainly not to a company of Adobe's size. So it is definitely a tough position that Adobe finds itself in. But honestly, a lot of it is of their own making, and they have the ability to get out of it. If they simply offer more options for people and perhaps reward people who've stuck with the company for a long time, then maybe they can weather all of these competitors that are coming about. Again, it's a multi-billion-dollar company. So they certainly could make adjustments and figure out how to navigate this. The big question is whether they're willing to, and I don't know that we're going to get that answer anytime soon, and I'm not sure what it's going to be. But this article, it's not really anything new. It's just that it's finally getting to a point where Adobe can't ignore it anymore, and we'll see what they do about it later.